Amal Unbound, Chapter 19 and 20, read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. My first job the next morning was to get Nazreen Baji's breakfast tray ready to bring up to her. The meal was a simple one: tea, toast with a dollop of jam, and a plate of sliced apples. Mumtaz showed me where the trays and teacups were kept in the kitchen before she left to sweep the terrace. I turned on the chai percolator and arranged the tray. Nabila wiped down the countertop next to the sink. Fatima swept up crumbs from the floor while her father stored chopped vegetables in the refrigerator. As I waited for the water to heat, I looked out the window. With Jawad Sahib gone, the servants were relaxed, and our veranda was busy. Tokir, the elderly servant who dusted and swept the main level of the estate, rested on a sharpay. Shagufta sat on a bench and chatted with another cleaning girl. The gardener was still holding a clipper in one hand as he was drinking tea and chatting with a few other men. When the chai was ready, I poured it into a porcelain cup etched with hummingbirds. Fatima tugged on my camise. "You want to try some?" "Try what?" I asked. "The chai," Fatima said. "I can get you a cup from the other cupboard." "I don't think I'm allowed." "If they don't find out, then it's not wrong. That's what Nabila always says. She sneaks things all the time." "Hush!" Nabila glowered at the girl. Fatima reddened and hurried to the back of the kitchen. "She's just a kid," I told Nabila. "She didn't mean anything by it." "You don't get to come here for a day and tell me what she did or didn't mean." I wanted to ask her what her problem was, but I bit my tongue. She could hate me for whatever reason she wanted, I thought. My father was collecting money for me at this very moment, and soon enough I'd be gone. Mumtaz hadn't mentioned how much sugar Nazreen Baji took, so to be safe I placed 5 sugar cubes in a crystal bowl and set it on the tray. "What are you doing?" Nabila frowned at my tray. "Why aren't you using the proper breakfast tray?" "Proper breakfast tray? I got this one from the drawer Mumtaz showed me." "There's more than one drawer." She smirked and pointed to a cabinet under the sink. "She uses the pink one, with the gold trim for breakfast. Always has." I walked over to the sink and leaned down to open the cupboard and sift through the fancy plates and serving dishes. I craned my neck. There were no trays. Would Nazreen Baji be angry if I served her breakfast on the wrong one? When I walked back to the counter, the tray I'd prepped was missing. "She took it." Fatima sat cross-legged peeling potatoes. "She took it," she repeated. "Probably went to Nazreen Baji herself." I rushed down the hall and up the stairs into Nazreen Baji's bedroom. Nabila stood in front of Nazreen Baji holding the tray in her hands. "I'm sorry." Nabila's voice shook. "I wanted to make sure you had it exactly the way you like it." "But you are not my maidservant anymore, Nabila. You understand that, don't you?" She looked down at the ground and nodded. "Go on now, and check with Mumtaz to see what needs to be done in the kitchen." Nabila sat down the tray on the nightstand by the bed and rushed past me. Her elbows bumped sharply into me. I walked over to Nazreen Baji and mixed in her sugar, 2 cubes, like she told me, like my mother. "I'll make it with the right amount of sugar next time." I handed her the cup. "And I'm sorry about the tray. I should have paid better attention." "Nabila is having a difficult time adjusting to the new situation." Nazreen Baji took a sip of tea. "She was my maidservant before you came." "She was? But why did you replace her with me?" I blurted out. "Nabila is a good girl, but she just made too many mistakes. The timing of your arrival was perfect. I was planning to replace her anyway." I carried the tray back down the stairs to the kitchen and thought about Nabila. It was clear she despised me, almost since the moment I arrived. But it made sense now. My life had changed overnight, and hers had too. Chapter 20. Some of us are trying to work. You might want to try it. Nabila said to me later that week as I made my way down the stairs carrying Nazarene Baji's empty breakfast tray. Nabila was dusting the chandelier with a long brush and shot me one of her hateful glances as I passed. I could have stated the obvious. I was working, wasn't I? But what was the point? It looked like I had an enemy whether I liked it or not. I rinsed out the teacups and glanced out the window. A breeze swept through the trees. A handful of servants rested on charpets. Maybe I could get a chance today to step outside for a little while and feel the fresh air against my face. Fatima poked her head into the kitchen. Nazarene Baji wants to see you right away. I dried my hands against the towel and hurried upstairs. Nazarene Baji was about to shower when I left. What could have happened? When I stepped inside, Nazarene Baji stared at her armoire. She wore a teal-blue robe. Her lips were pressed together into a thin line. Amal, what did you do? She pulled out a silk shalwar kameez from the armoire. I gasped. The kameez was charred straight through the center. I had ironed it along with 3 other outfits yesterday. I took care to use the gentlest setting. It took nearly an hour to press out all the wrinkles. Burning this is bad enough, she said, but to hide it from me? As if I wouldn't notice? Burn it? But Nazarene Baji, I shouldn't have assumed you knew how to handle expensive fabrics like this. You're not to touch my things again until Mumtaz goes over all the settings with you. Understood? But I knew how to iron. Just because we're not as rich as she was didn't mean that I never handled nice things. But I saw her expression. She'd already made up her mind. She wouldn't believe me. I'm sorry, I mumbled before leaving the room. When I walked into the kitchen, Nabila was there. Too bad about the ironing, she said. What? I didn't... My voice trailed off. I'd be careful, she said, brushing past me. Nazarene Baji does not tolerate mistakes very well. I stared at her retreating figure. Nabila did this. But what could I do? It was my word against hers. Why would Nazarene Baji believe me when she barely knew me? I rushed outside to the servants' veranda and hailed a deep breath to steady myself. Whether in the sugarcane fields or by the leafy stream bordering my family's land, being outside had always calmed me. But it was different here. Looking out at the perfectly trimmed lawn only made me miss the dirt backyard of my parents' home. And no matter how beautiful the fragrant gardens were, they were surrounded, as I was, by 10-foot brick walls. I was outside, but the walls reminded me that I was not free. Malik's daughter, aren't you? I recognized the man addressing me as Ghulam, the driver who had brought me here. He was with Bilal, Jawad Sahib's gangly servant. They sat on the low-seated woven stools, a brass hookah between them. I worked for your grandfather when I was a child, Ghulam said. Chopped the sugar cane and helped harvest the wheat. Recognized your house as soon as I pulled up. Her family owns land? Bilal asked. He cocked his head up and scrutinized me. I'd say a good 24 acres at least, the older man nodded. Ha! So even the mighty can fall down too, Bilal laughed. How easy it was for Bilal to laugh. His laugh was a pinprick. Not sharp enough to cut, but deep enough to sting. I had Nabila to set me in my place. I didn't need more. I turned to walk back into the house. Oh, come on, I didn't mean to upset you, Bilal said. We're not so bad, I promise. You don't have to make fun of me. I'm just trying my best to fit in. Looking like you'll shrivel into dust at a few words isn't fitting in. It's only going to make things worse for you, Bilal said. We heard what happened today. What are you going to do? Nothing. I folded my arms. I'm not going to sink to her level. That isn't fitting in, Bilal replied. That's letting people take advantage of you. Talk back and hold your own, or lose it forever. I don't need it forever, I said. And back home... Except you're not back home, you're here, the older man interrupted. His voice was neither harsh nor mocking. Instead, it was filled with pity. Pay attention. Learn. You decide how you will be treated. I walked back into the main house. They were right. My father would come and take me home any day now. But until then, I had to play by the rules of this house. And that meant I had to stand up for myself.